Vivek Ramaswamy, who is in contention to be one of the presidential candidates going into the 2024 election, is a successful entrepreneur and investor, though he is also an insightful thinker about many other issues in the larger public conversation. Recently, many Americans' most prominent business leaders have argued it is no longer sufficient for executives to narrowly focus on earning a profit. Instead, business decisions should advance through social causes. He is outspoken against this new form of woke capitalism, questioning the wisdom of moving social activism into the corporate sphere. Shareholders are always stakeholders in a corporation, but stakeholders are not always shareholders. What is shareholder and stakeholder capitalism? Shareholder capitalism. A shareholder owns part of a public company through shares of stock, while a stakeholder has an interest in the performance of a company for reasons other than stock performance or appreciation. In other words, they have a stake not just in the success or failure of a company, but also its moral obligations to society.
Joe Biden added the country as a stakeholder with a claim on business leaders. And there's reason to believe that this intellectual shift is having a real impact on markets. For example, the size of ESG funds, investment funds that prioritize environmental, social, and governance factors in their investment decisions, has grown by $70 billion since April of this year, bringing their total assets under management to $1 trillion. Why isn't stakeholder capitalism a sound response to concerns over inequality and climate change?
In other words, stakeholders and shareholders both own a percentage of a company, but stakeholders have a much larger role to play and can influence the company to success or failure. It depends on the kind of role they play within the company, but that's not all there is to woke capitalism. It's more a total holistic capitalistic approach in influencing our society through woke state corporatism. How it works. How woke corporations escape accountability. But that's not really what stakeholderism is about. At its core, it's a tool that empowers the managerial class and allows them to escape accountability for their failures to properly advance the essential purpose of an institution. It's what gives university administrators or charity administrators or hospital administrators or fancy New York private school administrators greater power and insulation from the people they're supposed to be accountable to. And that's a crucial part of the cultural cancer afflicting America today. Not just the government, but companies, universities, museums, philanthropies, and even religious institutions. If that's true for stakeholderism broadly, then it must be acute in the case of stakeholder capitalism. Here's why. The number one rule of the game of any CEO is to consolidate power in this: the more people you are accountable to, the more powerful you become. In my industry, that's why nearly every hired CEO wants to take their company public if given the choice. Why? As a private company, there's no such thing, it's all public, you're accountable to a small group of shareholders, often venture capitalists and private equity firms who are looking over your shoulder at every step of the way. But as a public company, you get to be accountable to thousands of shareholders, most of whom you'll never meet, and most of whom you'll never meet each other. That means that even if one shareholder isn't happy with that you do, you can always claim that another one is. That's nearly impossible to do at a closely held private company. If it's true that CEOs become less accountable by becoming accountable to more people, then stakeholder capitalism empowers the corporate managerial class to consummate their coup. By becoming accountable to literally everyone, they become accountable to no one. That's the heart of the problem of stakeholder capitalism. It's not about serving stakeholders rather than shareholders. It's about serving the managerial class itself. What Vivek is saying here is that the difference between a company that is accountable to a small group of shareholders is private, while a corporation that is beholden to a large number of people is considered public. Excuse me while I sound a bit skeptical of this statement, but the size differences of stakeholders in a company does not and should not make a difference in making it public or private, because they are both public. Let's take a closer look at what it means to be a shareholder or stakeholder. As you can see here, both shareholders and stakeholders own shares or stocks of a company. Because a company or business has gone public, it now means it has offered its shares to the public to raise additional capital. Going public typically refers to when a company undertakes its initial public offering or IPO by selling shares of stocks to the public, usually to raise additional capital. Going public is a significant step for any company, and you should consider these reasons companies decide to go public. Vivek once again. The more people you are accountable to, the more powerful you become. In my industry, that's why nearly every hired CEO wants to take their company public, if given the choice. Why? As a private company, no such thing, it's all public, you're accountable to a small group of shareholders. Vivek continues, but as a public company, you get to be accountable to thousands of shareholders, most of whom you'll never meet, and most of whom you'll never meet each other. No, as I've shown, it doesn't matter how many people you are held accountable to that determines whether it's private or public. That's just being semantic on his part, or he really doesn't know the difference. In both instances, the companies are public because the public owns the share or stocks. However, the more minor differences between the two types of stockholders that Vivek never really touches on much, and that is the quantity of role that either play within or outside the company. Shareholders, stockholders role. Anyone can own one share or shares. They have a financial interest in the company, and they can also exercise a vote, thus can affect management. These are called common shareholders. They want the greatest return. The more they own, the more vested interest they have in the company. Their vote accounts for more. However, preferred shareholders can't vote on policies, but can claim assets before common shareholders. Stakeholders can have an effect or can be affected or impacted, external shareholders. Example, employees, internal shareholders, debt, customers, suppliers, vendors, community, and other activities. In conclusion, for private companies, sole proprietorships and partnerships, the owners are liable for the company's debt. My final thoughts here, as you can see here, there's a lot more nuance and subtleties to being either a shareholder or stakeholder in a company. However, this isn't a video about investment opportunities or a how-to in being a share or stakeholder in a company. This is about Vivek's misunderstanding of the differences between public and private companies. This fundamental misunderstanding of differences between the shareholders and stakeholder capitalism, which is an oxymoron because capitalism is equal to being a private individual or sole proprietorship not owned by the public shareholders at large. You can't be both public and private, hence stakeholder capitalism doesn't make any sense. This can lead to solutions that can have unintended consequences. When asked for a solution to stakeholder capitalism, Vivek doesn't seem to have an answer or even a semblance of a solution. For example, in episode 107 of Investopedia Express with Caleb Silver on October 11, 2022, when asked about how Vivek invests and what customers should strive for, i.e. services and products, he says, invest in excellence. Advocate not for stakeholder capitalism, but excellence capitalism. But excellence in capitalism is individualism, not going public with your company and giving up ownership to your company to stock share stakeholders. As an advocate for true free market, laissez-faire capitalism, you should advocate for the individual to own and secure the means of production. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, please, if you like this content and like to see future content just like this, feel free or consider a small donation or contribution to the channel. Thanks again for watching. Ta-ta.